guess, kind of at the beginning, like, what was Hungary like as Eichmann came in the order of the final solution?
Well, Hungary was in the war, and it was a very unpleasant and a terrible time, not only for Jews, but especially for people who were Jewish, even, of course, those who were very assimilated, like my family. And every day there were some decrees against the Jews, what they cannot do or sell or be a part of. And so it was very scary, very scary time. But then, on March 19th, 1944, Hitler's army marched into Hungary and marched into Budapest, and I could see them from our balcony, and as you can imagine, it was very frightening. And the next day, I went over to my friends who lived in the next block, a couple, somewhat older than me, and the woman was a pianist, and the man was a scientist, a physicist. And I have been there many times because she gave some concerts and lectures, and I was playing the piano. I was, to this day, I love classical music. And they were also, as I said, Jewish, assimilated. And so I went over the next day, and there was a man whom I've never met before, a tall man, blonde hair, and he was introduced as John Kudar, Kudar, and he was not Jewish at all, but he was also a physicist and a colleague of my friend's husband, Imre, and he came over to ask them what he could do, how could he help. And we looked at each other, and there was an instant connection. And he asked me whether he could come over to where I lived with my parents, in the next block, and the next day, and he came. And my father was a dentist, and we had a very big apartment. And we started to talk, and then I don't know how it happened that for a very short time we were alone in the room, and he immediately asked me, would I marry him? And he could take me to Sweden, where he had been, and he has an agreement with a Swedish company to develop one of his patents. But of course, and I immediately said I would, but legally we could not get married because there was, one of those decrees was that those who were considered Jews, even if they had another religion, were not allowed to be married to non-Jews. But it so happened that a friend of mine had brought and sold me a set of false papers. She was also Jewish, and she had bought a set of papers for herself, and there was another set. And she came and asked me, would I want it? And I said, of course. And that was very lucky. So, and then, well, I can't go into all the details.
Speak louder, Mom, if you can.
Louder? Okay.
You're fine. Thank you.
Okay. Anyway, we had somebody forged. I'm sorry, I have to drink some water. Marriage certificate.
Talk a little louder if you can.
Yeah, I try, but I'm sorry. I'm very old.
We understand.
Yes. So, so with his false papers, At the same time, John had been invited to the University of Budapest Observatory, and he was also an astronomer, and the director of this observatory was a friend of his, and he had asked him several times to come and give some lectures there. And at this time he said, yes, I could come, but I just got married and I want to bring my wife. He said, sure. So we went up there. That's a tall hill or a small mountain, and we got a small room where other people were housed too, and so we went up there. And very soon after that, everybody heard the news that a Swedish diplomat, Raul Wallenberg, came to Budapest to negotiate with the Germans about the deportation of Jews, because immediately from the countryside and the country towns, Jews were deported to Auschwitz mostly, or such places. And so, but the Jews in Budapest were still there, most of them. And so John immediately went to find Wallenberg and offered his services, because he not only was very friendly with Jews, but also he had been in Sweden and he even spoke Swedish. And immediately Wallenberg said, sure. And so he started to work there, and Wallenberg rented a very nice house. These were called villas, which were these are elegant houses for one family usually. And that was at the bottom of the same hill, it so happened, where the observatory was. So we lived in the observatory, but every morning we went down to this villa where Wallenberg's office was, and John helped him and went with him. I think he did give a few lectures up there, but other than that he was there with Wallenberg, and they went he had a car and a driver who was also Jewish, and I think suffered the same fate as he did eventually. And went to those roads where the Jews were driven on foot, and it was, the weather was not very nice. And poor people had to walk, and one day I went with Wallenberg and John in the car. I was sitting in the back, and John, and with John and the driver and Wallenberg were sitting in the front. So I saw what was being done, and it was heartbreaking. But this only happened once. Other than that, I also went with John every day to this office, to Wallenberg's office, because he didn't want to leave me there. But, I had a false name, and it was a bit risky, and he wanted me to be where he could make me safe if necessary. And so this went on for maybe a couple of months, several weeks surely. And then one day when we went back up to the observatory, the director, this friend, said that there were 2 detectives looking for John, or for me, I think for John. And they didn't say why, but they were there, and he sent them away because, of course, he had no idea that I wasn't who I was. These were false papers. My name was Elizabeth. But he said that we are not there, that they should come back the next day. We'll be there. And when we heard this, what do you think we did?
You guys left?
What?
Did you guys leave?
Of course. Immediately we went to our room, packed everything totally necessary in a small suitcase, and left. And we walked down. We didn't even take that as a kind of a little tramway that went uphill and down, but we were so anxious not to be able to be found that we walked down, and we didn't know what to do, so we went back to the office. And you know, and then when the evening came and everybody left, we didn't know where to go, so we stayed there, and only one man, one of the guardians knew, because we were not supposed to do that. And he told us, now be very careful, not make any noise, because we are not supposed to be there. But in the morning I made a mistake. I went to the bathroom and flushed the toilet. And at that time people were coming in and we were discovered. And Wallenberg made us come down, and with a few other people present, he told us that we should not have done that because he has an agreement with the Hungarian government, with the Budapest government, that nobody can sleep there. And because we did that, we jeopardized his credibility, and we have to leave right then and there. And then we left. And so Wallenberg, it was very embarrassing, of course, but there was nothing else we could do. And then John, well, we were very lucky, and we found a place to stay, and John went to the Portuguese consulate, because they and some others also started to do what the Swiss did, issuing passport. It was called Schutzpass, which means a protective passport. It was really a big piece of paper which said that these such and such people are under the protection of the Swedish crown. And then, as I said, the Portuguese did the same thing. So, what I can tell you about Wallenberg is that, I'm sure you have some pictures of him, so he was an average looking, very nice, elegant European gentleman, but nothing special about his looks. And funnily, some people thought that my husband, John, was Wallenberg because he looked Swedish. He was tall and blonde, and Wallenberg was brown and not that tall. Anyway, he was a very, very nice gentleman, and he was working very hard all the time. People came to talk to him, and I, of course, don't know about his encounters with this the German. What was his name? I can't think of it.
Eichmann?
No, it was not Eichmann. Eichmann was the other one. You know, he was
Hitler.
not Hitler. No, there was somebody who was put in charge of the events in Budapest. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. I did know it, but I forgot. And so then I can only tell you that he was a very nice man, and I don't even know how it was he who was chosen and whether he was a diplomat in Sweden, but he was extremely, simpatico, somebody you would trust and like. And I am very, very sad what happened to him, and I think this should not have been allowed to happen. That that the Russians arrested him and eventually, I think, executed him. He died there in prison. And I think that if the American would have intervened when they heard that he was taken, they would have saved him. They would have said, hey, he's a diplomat. He cannot be just taken away. But he was. So that's what I can tell you, unless you have questions.
About what time did you meet him? Like date-wise?
What date? I can't tell you, but it was in the summer of 44.
Okay.
It may have been in June or July. I don't really know.
And your husband, did they happen to meet, or like they met through the observatory? Like was it a chance encounter?
Who?
John and Wallenberg.
No. John went to find him as soon as he heard that he was in Budapest and to offer his services. And Wallenberg accepted them. No, he went there and said, I want to help. I've been in Sweden, and I think what's going on here is terrible, and I'd like to help you to save as many people as possible. That's how they met, and then that's how it came that he worked very close with Wallenberg every day after that.
Did he help him with issuing passes? Did he help him
No,
with...
there were a lot of people who did that kind of office work, no. I don't know exactly, but he went with him where Wallenberg went, and also to get people out of, that he was now officially employed by Wallenberg, and he went to some places where Jews were herded together, for instance, in one brick factory, and where he found my best friend and her family, her father and mother and little brother, and he got them out, which was wonderful. So he did this kind of thing, going to places. Yes?
When you had to leave, did you leave on your Swedish passport or did you leave on your Portuguese?
Well, we didn't leave Hungary right away, but we had the Portuguese passport when we eventually decided. That was after the Russians had occupied Hungary. We left. But that was, that had nothing to do with Wallenberg. By that time he was gone. But we left because John was very smart. Actually, he was quite a bit older than me. He was 19 years older. But, I was 23 and he was 42.
Oh, wow.
But, that was okay. And he, he said, it's a long story what happened between the day the Russians arrived and where we were then and so on. But he said let's get out of here because it will be like in the Soviet Union and we'll not be able to leave because one will need an export permission, not export, exit permission. And so we started on foot and eventually, well,
Were there rumors about Wallenberg? Your husband found out about him because of what people were saying?
no, I think it was, big news everywhere. Everybody knew about Wallenberg. I don't know whether it was in the newspapers or whether it was word of mouth, but it was not a secret. It was a totally open knowledge that he had just come.
Guys, question?
Could you describe like what the Hungary background was, like the situation back then during the war and when the Jews were being deported, what it was like?
Well, I can only tell you that the Jews were getting deported after the Germans invaded Hungary. But before that, as I said, there were many decrees. Every day some new. You cannot be part of any organization. You couldn't be an actor or actress and appear in theaters. You couldn't sell tripe. Can you imagine? And there were some street vendors who sold tripe, apparently. All of a sudden, they couldn't sell tripe. So as you can see, it went into all kinds of ridiculous, ridiculous degrees, and of course they couldn't teach, and the doctors, Jewish doctors could only treat the Jewish patients, and it was awful for Jews. And I have thought that I am happy that I was Jewish. Because who knows, maybe I would have been also just participating by not doing anything and just watching what was going on. And I hope that if I had not been Jewish, I would have been helping like John.
So you have a Schutzpass, right? And
I have one in a Portuguese one. I have, or my niece has a Swedish one for my sister, because of course my family all got then right away the Swedish Schutzpasses. And my parents and my grandmother and my sister, they had it, and my sister still exists, I think, but I have the Portuguese one, yes.
What's your Schutzpass? Who signed it?
What?
The Schutz.
What?
Who signed it?
Oh, I think it was the consul, must have been. And I don't know whether Wallenberg signed it. Do you know what? I don't remember, but it was official, accepted. And so what happened was that the Swedish company, or not company, but it's the Swedish people who were active there bought a building, an apartment house near the Danube, and all those Jews who had Schutzpasses could move in there. And so my parents and friends and others moved into that house, because one of the things that had happened was that some apartment buildings were declared Jewish buildings and others were declared Christian or not Jewish buildings. And so therefore those who lived in the so-called non-Jewish buildings, like my parents, and I had lived there, had to move. And then we moved, that was before Wallenberg arrived, into my aunt's nearby apartment. She was also a dentist. And she sadly, for some ridiculous coincidence, was deported and died in Auschwitz. But we were in her apartment until we moved into the Swedish building, the Swedish apartment house. Well, every day there was something. That was, yes, ask.
What kind of impact on the world do you think Raul left, his legacy?
Wallenberg, I don't know what many people know about him, but I really, people who know me know about Wallenberg, but I don't think that a lot of people here in New York would know about him. But there is a Wallenberg Foundation, and I was invited there, and they interviewed me once people came here actually and interviewed me. Well, may you never experience any such terrible times, and if there is any grave injustice, I hope that when you grow up, you will be on the right side and do your best.
I know they will, Judith. I mean, the boys they want to bring Wallenberg's story forward. They feel like he's forgotten.
Well, I suppose he's forgotten by people who never knew him, but those people who knew him or about him are dying out,
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
You said that Wallenberg didn't look like a diplomat to you. You said he was just...
No, he looked like I don't know what a diplomat looks like, a very intelligent-looking, well-dressed European gentleman.
I know one of the sources we read, Per Anger, said he showed up with carrying a knapsack, and it wasn't what he was expecting, that he was very casual.
I don't know about that. That's could be. I don't know.
So, you were Wallenberg. You were in the car with Wallenberg while trying to escape, right? So, can you describe that experience?
What did you ask?
He just wants to know what it was like when you were with Wallenberg in the car. You said it was an emotional...
Well, I didn't say anything, I was very respectful, and and he was in front, and I was in the back, so we didn't really talk.
Okay.
Okay.
Judith,
That's it.
I'm so honored. I know when we met in November, it was such an honor talking to you then.
Well, it was an honor for me that I was asked to come and shake hands with some important people. Yes. What's his name?
Senator Blumenthal.
Senator Blumenthal, yes. And the rabbi.
Yes, it was.
The rabbi.
Yes, Wainhouse.
Winners. I liked him so much.
We did too. I know that the boys just want to make sure that they do a good job and tell the right story.
Okay.
It's triumph and tragedy this year. So obviously, you were part of Wallenberg's triumph.
Yes. Yes. Oops. So, what is
Sorry,
this?
that's the principal's phone's ringing.
Okay, so maybe that's it.
Yep, so thank you so much,
Thank
Judith.
you very much. I'm honored that you asked me.
Oh, Alan, we're so appreciative.
Oh, you're very welcome. A pleasure.
Now, I think you sent me copies of the Schutz Pass, correct? You guys